Dark tales for dark nights.
Knuckle Supper. Written by Drew Stepek. Performed by Jason Hill. Chapter 28. Confidants. When I regained consciousness, I was slung over Eldritch's back. He had apparently carried me all the way from downtown, or, at the very least, from his car. Activated by a clapper rather than black magic or telekinesis, classical music reverberated inside Eldritch's loft. After dropping me in front of the human hookah, Lord Drogula made his way to the kitchen to warm me up some fresh blood, stopping only at his fanciful display cabinet to represent his sword. My shoulders desperately thirsted for blood. My mouth, on the other hand, needed to be disinfected. I crawled over to the comatose human sacrifice. His left toes twitched as if he knew it was feeding time. "Do you have any Listerine or rubbing alcohol or anything, Eldritch?" I spit out a lump of vomit stuck in my teeth. I guess I was lucky to have teeth. If the Desian kid had any sense at all, he would have beaten my teeth out jailhouse style before he made me suck his cock. "In the bathroom." "Don't worry about that now. You need to get those wounds healed. How come none of those weirdos in the opera house tried to attack you?" I looked toward the kitchen. Any other person would have just nuked the blood for me, but Eldritch always did things his way. In the center of his kitchen was a cast iron wood-burning stove. He poured the blood into an old copper tea kettle. I noticed that he never owned anything made from silver. I suppose it was due to his lichen upbringing. "I am their friend. I bring them food and blood all the time." I picked up the main tube from the hookah. "Kinda like working in a soup kitchen? Meals on wheels shit?" Eldritch pondered for a second and simply said, "Yes, I suppose it is. Don't use that one." I looked at the pipe. "Why? Do I have to supply you with an answer to that? I use that pipe." Rather than engaging in any conversation that would eventually lead to the reason why he didn't want me smoking from his pipe, I dropped it and exchanged it for one of the shabbier ones that came from the victim's thigh. Eldritch returned to me and handed me an antiqued and bejeweled chalice. I took a huge swig out of it and chased it with a puff from the living pipe. "How did you find me anyway?" I asked. From behind one of his many curio cabinets, he produced a mop. He walked behind me and sponged up the slug trail I had left. "One of those unfortunates is a very good friend of mine. He called me just after you arrived there this morning." He returned the mop to its secret pantry, hiding it from view. God forbid he let anyone know that he cleaned up after himself, rather than having a loyal Renfield do those things for him. I wish that Bate were there to see him in action. Eldritch sat down on the sofa, crossed his legs, and blew vile clove smoke in my direction. I coughed, using my hand to loft the sweet-smelling stench back his way. "Do you have any real cigarettes, Eldritch? Have you not smoked enough today?" His face lit up as if he had just told a joke that brought down the house at the Improv. "Really, dude? Lucky that I like you. And you're also lucky you saved me. Do me a favor, Cinderella, and leave the jokes to the pros." I sat on the floor Indian style, rubbing my shoulders. I felt the skin start to seal up from where the hooks had pierced me. The opium felt good as it streamed through my veins, reminding me why I needed narcotics. I was, after all, born addicted. "I knew you weren't gone, RJ. The question is, where have you been?" Des and Copperhead set me up and fit me to the cloth. I've been in their religious rehab center. Eldritch produced a file from the side table next to him and began sharpening his claws. "So that makes it okay to kill the Batwangers? Have you learned nothing of the vampire code? There aren't that many of us. Why kill your brothers? On top of that, why do you hate those who are not like you? Why do you hate gay people? You're just not a nice person. He was right. Even though trannies and gays had helped me when I was first learning the trade, all they ever heard from me was hateful words. For some dumb reason, I decided that I was better than them solely because they were different from me. My right ear was still pounding from the Habit's mad artillery show. Unlike the rest of my body, my hearing wasn't going to be healed anytime soon. You tell me what you would have done. They were training me to kill for them like an animal. They force-fed me blood like cardinals and shit, and they only gave me drugs after I did what they told me to do for them. When I say drugs, I mean methadone. I had a dog collar around my neck that was programmed to slice my head off, for God's sake. He extended his fingers and blew the metal shavings into the air. I would have fallen on my sword. Maybe I didn't have a sword in my fucking jail cell that was tipped with a gigantic ultraviolet sunbeam. Besides, bro, the Batwangers were supposed to keep bait away from Dez. They turned her out. I have no idea where she is or if she's even alive. And King Cobra? He's dead. Bye? I continued rubbing my shoulders and drinking the blood. Why the fucking Inquisition? Because you killed a lot of my friends, RJ. They might not have been like you or I. No one is like you. Be that as it may, he continued, ignoring my comments. You have broken an unspoken code of conduct set forth by the undead. I'm not going to justify myself for this. First off, there is no code of conduct. We're in gangs. We fight to sell and do drugs. Secondly, I mangled them because if I didn't, I was going to be killed. He blew some steel flakes from his filing off his nails. There is a code. You don't kill others like you. What is this code shit? I pulled the pipe out of my mouth and lifted the foot of the hookah. Is this your code? The fucking guy is alive right here and he is your bong. Hookah? Whatever. Where is the line drawn in this holy code of yours? This guy has more of a right to live than a bunch of killers who are already dead. Eldritch, getting a little perturbed, threw his clove on the floor, stood up and extinguished it under his boot. He marched across the room and opened a vintage desk by the staircase. He put on a pair of 18th century reading glasses and rested them on his nose. Then, picked out a stack of parchment papers and a raven's feather quill. Still a little excited, he rustled through the documents. Ah, here it is, he finally stated. He placed the other pages back into the desk and brought the page of interest over to me. It clearly states here, I, Thomas Anthony Buchanan, do give my body and soul to thee, Baron Eldridge III, for a reward in the life after. He pointed to the document with the quill. It's all here. I snatched the sheet from his hand and read it. What is this? A contract, signed in the blood of the man you're feeding from. Dude, you make these people sign contracts? Who's going to bust you? How are you going to be sued? Look at this guy. I picked up his hand and dropped it. He's never going to be right again. It is a part of my personal code of vampire ethics. These individuals willingly give themselves to me. You're no better than me, pal. Just because they gave themselves to you doesn't make it right. Frustrated, he nabbed the contract from me and returned it to his desk. He looked back and shook the piece of paper. This is my contract. It is proof that my transgressions are not those of a heathen. I rolled my eyes. I also had Cobra to worry about. They completely fucked that guy up. For someone who places little to no value on life, you sure wanted to live. Why is that? I don't know, really. I guess I figured that if I ever got out of there, I could find bait. I thought about her a lot while I was trapped. And since Nomi told me that the BPPs bought her and took her to wherever, I wanted to save her. What if I told you that she is still alive, and that I know where she is? How would you know that, Baron? Not detecting the sarcasm in my voice, he said, I met Des and Copperhead to give them the money. I gave them the bag. No questions asked. You gave them my money. Why? It would seem that your present state answers that riddle for you. Ever since that bag of heroin came to be in your hands, nothing but horrible things have happened. They told me that you were looking to kill my Nightcrawler friends and me. They asked me to join them in their crusade toward a new way. I honorably declined. I walked over to him. Is she okay? I did not see her, but I do know that Des and Copperhead are now running all the drugs through the Skinland invasion compound. You've got to be kidding me. Meth? Not just meth. Everything. There is no longer a division of the street trade. One group, one source. The police will not even step foot on their land because they have made it very clear what they are and what their intentions are. How deep is this group? Deep? I do not think they are a very enlightened bunch. Not deep like that, Eldritch. Deep like, how big of a gang is it? From what I judged, 20 SIs, Des and his followers, Copperhead and what is left from the rest of the gangs. A rough estimate would be about 40. But they're mostly pussies like Des, right? Like you and I could rip them to shreds? Have you looked at yourself in the mirror? That's a stupid question, Eldritch. You don't have any mirrors in the house. That would give away the mystery behind whether vampires give off reflections. Oh, why are you such a mean person? I just saved you from certain death, and all you continue to do is pick and pry at my very existence. Can we get her back or not? I do not kill others like myself. It is an oath. You chopped the head off of that guy today. He was a vampire. I killed him because he was about to kill you. I am not proud of my actions. I stood up, walked over to his desk, and placed my hand on his shoulder. Look, I'm not trying to make you do anything that jeopardizes your beliefs. I looked into his eyes, realizing that he had skull contact lenses in. She's a 13-year-old girl who, if still alive, is being raped, beaten, and tortured. Please, look beyond your code of ethics and do this for the greater good. I appealed to his sense by pleading in the flowery context of his worldview. She's a human child. These monsters are performing unspeakable atrocities on a child. She needs our help. Eldritch nodded his head and cupped my hand into his. I am with you, brother. You are correct. She cries out for our rescue. Besides, I don't have a car and I don't know if an MTA line can get me to the Inland Empire. Eldritch dropped my hand, smirked, and said, Please, go and use some mouthwash now. Your breath is heinous. I squirmed around in the red vinyl seats of Eldritch's hearse, creating as much gassy noise as a 500-pound chili-eating champion the night after a day's worth of competition. I looked over at Eldritch, slouching over the wheel to fit his lumbering frame into the driver's seat. His razor fingernail spikes pawed at the steering wheel as his steel fangs bounced off his tongue. Every few minutes, when a section of a song excited him, he grabbed the right section of his ass-length raven-colored hair and flung it back behind the headrest. I wanted to tell him to wrap his mane up in a scrunchie or something, but what would be the use of that? I'm sure having his hair covering his face made him look more vampirific. I hesitated for a few minutes, shuffled around in the fart seat and blurted out, "Is this all really necessary, Eldritch?" Of course, I was referring to the hearse filled with more vampire cliches than the last stopped gift shop outside of Vlad the Impaler's castle. He swung his eyes to me without turning his head from the highway. "I don't know, RJ. Is this Scarlet Woman worth it?" Scarlet Woman? I searched my brain for a reference. It's called a hooker, Eldritch, and bait isn't even that. I was supposed to be her first John. "We act one way, you act another," he declared. "Just because we come from different eggs doesn't mean we're not all the same. We are all creatures of the night." Oh my god, dude. I picked at my ear. "You're killing me." Eldritch turned the stereo off and downshifted the car, screeching it beyond the shoulder and into the desert. A sandstorm blasted from his tires through the open windows of the hearse. I shot forward and barely escaped plowing through the windshield by bracing my arms against the dashboard. The sand dissipated, falling into the Count's hair and all over his black leather trench coat. He sat still for a moment, silently looking forward. He then blew the hair out of his eyes, spraying California inland dirty ashes. He tapped his razor claws on the steering wheel. "Well?" he finally challenged. I spit out of my finger and rubbed the sand out of my eyes. As I licked it out of my gums and spit it back into my hand, I returned. "Well, what?" He sat still for another moment, then shifted his body around in the driver's seat and clutched my neck where my dog collar burn remained. Without any visible anger in his tone or his eyes, he quietly asked again, "Well?" The sand trickled down my throat like I was an hourglass about to be timed out. I squeezed out, "I'm sorry." But Eldritch didn't release his grip. "You know that I shan't need to do this, correct, RJ? I could easily collect my belongings and leave Los Angeles," he continued. "I do have a debt owed to me. The chances that either of us will walk away are faint. I am doing this for you. A friend." He released me. I hacked up some of the sand for a minute and looked at him squarely. "I'm sorry." Eldritch threw the hearse back into gear and crept back onto the I-10. "Still choking a little on the sand," I said. "Where exactly are we going? I don't know anything about the SIs except for the fact that they're white supremacists and that they do a shitload of crank. As a matter of fact, I've only met the leader once. What's his name? Zitz or something? His name is Pox, and their dominion is on the outskirts of the Salton Sea." Eldritch produced a clove cigarette from behind his left ear. "It's an old, destitute hotel called the Sea and Sun Oasis." By flicking his thumb against his index claw, he sparked it. Unsurprisingly, the flame disappeared when he snapped his fingers. Thinking he couldn't see me, I rolled my eyes and left a soft giggle out of my nose. A smirk lifted over the corner of Eldritch's pale, sunken cheekbones. "It is rather ostentatious, is it not?" I doubled over laughing as sand from my hair fell into my lap. It's all really, really lame, dude. You know what, though? He blew clothes into the already smoky and dusty car. "No matter how lame you can be, King Cobra was always terrified of you." He smiled. It was dark as Eldritch cautiously drove through what was left of the Salton Sea with the stereo low and the lights on the hearse off. The buildings in the tortured town looked like they would crumble at the slightest movement, such as us bouncing over a crack in the road. Graffiti camouflaged the faded pastel covers of the Art Deco architecture. I rolled up my window. It smelled like the wharf had been shoved into suitcases and someone was opening them as we passed. I kid you not. The air was so thick with the perfume of rotting fish and birds that I couldn't help but pull my shirt over my face and inhale my own body odor rather than catch the slightest whiff. What the fuck happened here? I asked as I wiped spittle off my face. I rubbed it into the fibers of my jeans. It was quite a tourist attraction in the 1950s. However, it was a man-made sea, and since it's nothing more than a hole filled with old water that has nowhere to escape to, agricultural runoff and pollutants are trapped, killing all the wildlife. The sea is nothing more than another one of man's unwanted atrocities. Open the glove compartment. We cannot drive any farther. Eldridge pulled the hearse into a covered parking area next to a hotel and cut the engine. Following his orders, I opened the glove compartment. Rolled into a leather rig kit were 6 needles. Heroin? I asked. Hardly, he said. It's poor, man. A nice combination of 80% speed and 20% heroin. The only reason I put heroin in it at all was to keep us focused slightly. It will also feed your hunger for both drugs. I unfastened one of the needles from the case and held it up to a flickering old light above the garage where we parked. The greasy brown gas station toilet water color affirmed Eldridge's chemical mix. Garbage. Are you kidding me, dude? Even if I wanted this in my body, how the hell are we supposed to get in there? This place is a ghost town. Eldridge pointed off to a rusted airstream a block from the hotel that was surrounded by a 6-foot-tall barbed wire fence. Behind the fence, a mad pack of Rottweilers was gnawing on the razor wire like it was made of rawhide. Remembering the fates of Leroy and Skillet, I grabbed Eldridge by his bony shoulder. Are you kidding me? Come on, dude, I can't kill someone's pet. Copperhead killed both my dogs. How about some nice, clean heroin and some dude on steroids or something? That is not going to work, RJ. I do not think you realize what we were about to do. Not only is this area flooded with SIs, we also have to worry about Dez, Copperhead, and the rest of the followers. So, just like I asked before, is this worth it? I remembered Leroy and Skillet unable to play with me after Copperhead maimed them. Then I thought about Bait. I didn't even know if she was still alive. On top of that, what chance did Eldridge and I have to take on these second-rate psychopaths? I held the needle up to the light again. I opened the car door and kicked my combat boot out onto the marsh of the Salton Sea. I remembered Bait in the bathroom, giving herself an abortion. I remembered Leroy and Skillet, with their heads bobbling around. Bait wanted less to bring another unwanted little monster into this world than I wanted to be alive. For that, and the fact that I think I felt some type of fatherly obligation to her, I needed to help her. Reluctantly, I said, "It's worth it." I stayed in the hearse as Eldridge got out and closed the door. He swung his charcoaled hair back, dusting out more sand as he shifted the tail end of his leather trench coat to the side, revealing his bare chest, his pinstriped trousers, and his patent leather creepers. He flipped a clove into his mouth and immediately clapped both his hands, spawning fire from all his fingers. He lit the sugary grit. Finally, he waved his flaming hands in circular motions over his face. The blaze smothered, creating the illusion of smoke rising from his shoulders. I looked at the door handle to the hearse, wanting to close it. My boots sank further into the swampland outside as I stood up and shut the door behind me. Jesus fucking Christ, I grumbled. Our shadows moved side by side to the dog pen, looking like those of an adult with his child. I hadn't realized that Eldridge was so much more massive than me. If he had been more muscular, he was quite lanky. He would have easily been the size of Herman. Herman, Another reason I had to kill these bastards. The dogs bit at the barbed wire and each other the closer we got. At one point, one of the bulkier, more agitated rots bit into one of his brother's hides, tearing a hole into its hindquarters. That was my dog, I decided. Leave the poodles for Eldritch. The guy was already huge. Are you ready? Which one do you want? I pointed at the savage who had just crippled his little brother. The big one. Good choice. Eldritch lunged his right arm through the barbed wire, grasped the stout neck, and yanked the dog out, stripping fur off as he pulled. The dog wailed as it tried desperately to clamp its jaws onto Eldritch's gigantic hands. You ready? What am I supposed to do? I only know how to kill humans. The dog squirmed more as it yelped and kicked its dangling rear legs at the leather trench coat. It is almost the same thing. The rot slung slobber across Eldritch's bare chest. No, it's not. Asshole humans don't deserve to live. These dogs, he interrupted and catapulted the hound at me. Damn it, man. Catch! The ravenous animal propelled through the air and caught me on the forearm. Its teeth sunk in with no intention of letting go. Put the dog down, Eldritch commanded. I dropped the dog down to the wet ground under my forearm as Eldritch made his way over to me to open the dog vice consuming my arm. The dog released. Hold him down by the throat and drop your leg into its chest. As I had with the wanger, I turned away from my victim. Where are the drugs? I motioned with my head as I held the dog at bay. In my back pocket. Eldritch grabbed the rig kit out of the pocket and pulled a syringe out. He tapped at it and squeezed the air out, squirting just a bit of the brown sludge from the top. When he knew it was ready, he plunged the needle into the dog's heart. Get ready, he advised. Making sure he depleted everything in the spike, he pulled it out, threw it, and instantaneously dug his razor claws into the animal's chest cavity. As the kicking and fighting from the dog turned into trance-like movements and its tongue dangled to the side, Eldritch tugged the heart out, shattering the sternum outward. Eat it, he said, softly. I closed my eyes and did as he said. As soon as I had the snack in my mouth, Eldritch headed back to the dog cage. The dogs backed up and tried to snuggle underneath the trailer. Their attempt to hide was fruitless, however, because the leather-coated nightcrawler ripped his way through the wire fence and grabbed two of them by their bobbed tails. He dragged the animals out and collapsed on top of them, his knees crushing their chests. He produced a needle in both his hands, plunged them into the dogs, and then withdrew their hearts. I was filled with the amped feeling of terror ahead. The animal blood and meth in my system made me shake and vibrate. Ready to kill. Good evening. This is Jason Hill, host of the Horror Hill podcast. You've been listening to a chapter from the award-winning novel Knuckle Supper by best-selling author Drew Stepek. Knuckle Supper, Ultimate Gutter Fix Edition, and its critically acclaimed sequel, Knuckleballed, are available now from Bloodbound Books. Check out the links in the video description and sticky comments below to pick up a copy today and show your support for indie horror. Also, please consider making a donation to Children of the Night today and help end teen prostitution and human trafficking. Children of the Night is a privately funded non-profit organization established in 1979 with the specific purpose of providing intervention in the lives of children who are sexually exploited and vulnerable to, or involved in, prostitution and pornography. Visit childrenofthenight.org for more information today. From author Drew Stepek and all of us here at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, thanks for listening and for your support.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.